Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ruby, this is Ruby Red, and today we're starting a lot of books. A few months ago, Kayla from Books and Lala posted a video where she read the first chapter of all 100 books on her TBR, and pretty much as soon as I even saw that the title and thumbnail, I was like, oh, I want to do that. Because I feel like, I'm a mood reader, and she did that video kind of to prepare to mood read, which is goofy. But I feel like I am hyped about a book when I buy it and then it sits on my shelf for a while and then the hype kind of dies. So I want to re-hype myself about some of these books. And also WONDERTHON is happening starting next week and I want to be ready. I want to be hyped. So I want to be able to pick a bunch of books I'm really excited about off of my bookshelf for WONDERTHON. So I have decided to read the first chapter of all of the books on my TBR that I have not yet read the first chapter of. So let's just swing over to the bookshelf. Okay, so this is my TBR shelf. These are all the books I own that I haven't yet read, excluding any of the books that I've already started. I have several books that I know I've already read the first chapter or so, and so I'm not putting them in this video. So these are all the books, and here they are in alphabetical order, and this way I will be reading them in that order instead of just picking them in a way that might bias me by accident. So yes, I'm gonna read these books alphabetically to avoid accidentally biasing myself, but I also want to sort them by most to least intrigued, and then potentially some of those least intrigued books I will simply get rid of. But I also know that sometimes it's just not the right time for a book, hence the other stack of books I have not on my bookshelf. That is books that I started and didn't continue with. And I'm gonna try to slot those in as well in my records, my internal record system. So yeah, I'm gonna read the first chapter of all of these. I will give you my impression and I will let you know how I am gonna rank them. There are some big boys here. So the other caveat is I'm saying I'll read the first chapter, but in my head that is between 10 and 20 pages. If the first chapter is less than 10 pages, I will simply read 10 pages. And if it's more than 20 pages, I'm just gonna stop reading at 20. Because I don't wanna spend more than today doing this. And I'm actually not sure if this is gonna work, but we're gonna try. Okay, time to read. Okay, I read the first 5 chapters of these books. Some of them I read a prologue and then a first chapter, or just a prologue or what have you, to just get within the page range that I said and also feel like I had a sense of the story. Hi, Carbon. Okay, the first book I read the first chapter of was Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This is my first James Baldwin reading experience, and I really enjoyed it. The writing was very moody and reflective, and it ended in a way that I was definitely intrigued to continue. I really enjoyed the writing style, the moodiness of it. I was really vibing with. It was honestly a little bit ominous at the end of that first chapter, so I'm definitely very interested in continuing to read this book. I really had a good time, and I don't know what I expected, but the tone was just different than I thought it would be, in a good way. So that's our first chapter. Okay, my second first chapter was 1453 by Roger Crowley, The Holy War for Constantinople and the Clash of Islam and the West. I actually borrowed this book from my dad because I had been telling him I feel like I just don't know anything about this period in history of Constantinople and the Ottoman Empire. I just don't really know that I learned about it in any depth at all in my education. So I just felt like that was a gap in my knowledge of history, and my dad was like, hold on. And he comes back downstairs with a book about exactly that. So I'm definitely interested in reading this. The writing was, as you could expect, very dense. The words are teeny tiny on these pages, so it's not a huge book, but it would be definitely an undertaking. Even in just the prologue, I was wanting to look stuff up and be oh, what's that about? And I needed to look at a map. And so this is quite an undertaking, and I'm still interested in the topic. And I think that this book will probably inform me very well about the topics that I am interested in, but I was definitely not dying to keep reading when I finished the however much I read at the beginning of this. So I guess I'm gonna put Giovanni's Room stays on the bottom, because that will be like, when I put these on my bookshelf, I want it to be like most intriguing and then least intriguing. So that's how I'll stack them for now. Next up is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This is the first book in the Expanse series. It's enormous, and I picked this up at a used bookstore because Connor read the synopsis and also seemed interested, and so we got it. And the prologue was like kind of scary and like extremely ominous, like, oh my gosh. And then I read the first chapter because the prologue was pretty short, and the first chapter like finished on a really, again, like ominous, like kind of cliffhanger. So immediately, like, I wanted to just keep reading this. So that's a great sign for this book. It's not a great sign for me and the other big books that I want to read, but that's okay. This I did feel was like slightly more intriguing to me in an immediate sense than Giovanni's Room. So I'm putting this on the bottom as my most intriguing. Okay, next, another huge book, The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I read, again, the prologue and the first chapter of this one, I think. And I have technically read this before, but I didn't remember it at all. So I kept it in this pool. I'm feeling excited about this. I've had it on my 30 by 30, known that I was gonna want to read it and remember liking it, but having that chapter fresh in my mind is definitely gonna give me a push to read this sooner than later. Was this more or less intriguing than Giovanni's Room? I think less, but close. So this is gonna go here. Okay. And then finally I have Metazoa by Peter Godfrey Smith, Animal Life and the Birth of the Mind. So this is a nonfiction book about animal life and the birth of the mind, which I don't even remember when we got this, but there was a lot of stuff about like cellular life forms. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm not dying to read this right now, but I definitely feel more inclined to pick it up than I did before reading that first chapter. So that's something. And I'm gonna put this between Pillars of the Earth and 1453. So sorry to that book. So this is the beginning of my stack. Now I'm gonna go grab the next, I think I'm gonna get 6 books in my next arm load, so that it's broken up better. This was the second batch of books that I pulled off my shelf to read the first chapter of, and it did take me a bit. So this might turn into a 2-day project. I read the first chapter of Downriver by Heather Hansman. This is a nonfiction book about water in the West, specifically from the like central point of view of the Green River, which is one of the tributaries of the Colorado River. I don't know if you can call it a tributary, but it meets. And Heather took a paddling trip down the entire length of that river, and I think she's going to use that journey as the narrative thread for talking about water rights, water usage in the West. And I gotta say, like, the texture of this book is really good. It feels really good, which is huge for me when picking out a book. And I really like the style of writing. I like to read nonfiction that has a personal element, a personal narrative throughout the story. So I'm really interested actually to continue reading this book. Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Then I read the first chapter of The Triumph of Seeds by Thor Hansen. Now, this is again a nonfiction about seeds. And it's also that same type of nonfiction book that has a really strong narrative thread through it. I think I just read like the preface and the introduction, so not even a chapter, but I did like the writing style. I think it'll be interesting. I'm intrigued to read this, but I'm not like I'm not dying to read it. So, less intrigued. Next, I read This Book is Overdue, How Librarians and Cybrarians Can Save Us All by Marilyn Johnson. I have a whole list of books about libraries and librarians that I've been slowly reading from because I like it. And this I found in the dollar section of a used bookstore, so I brought it home with me, and I was really surprised by this. So it is from 2010, so I think anything talking about tech and librarians from 2010 is already dated, but the attitude I think is still, you know, is right. And I was so pleasantly surprised by the first chapter of this. I was so intrigued I didn't want to stop reading it. So that's amazing. Big yes, this was great. This made me feel like optimistic, which is not easy. So that I'm more intrigued by than Downriver, slightly. Okay, then I read the first chapter of A Honeybee Heart Has 5 Openings by Helen Jukes. Now, I got this at a library book sale for $1, and I got it, first of all, because the cover is just so beautiful. Are you kidding me? And it's blurbed by Helen MacDonald, who wrote H's for Hawk, which I haven't read, but I should, and Robert McFarlane, who wrote Underland, which I did read and love. So that drew me in. It's a memoir, which I don't love straight up memoirs, but I think that there's also going to be a lot of stuff about bees in this book, and I love bees. Yeah, I really liked the first chapter of this. I don't even know if it was like the first chapter or the first month or whatever, but I really liked Helen, and I feel like this would be just a very uplifting book. It seems easy to read, generally uplifting, like bees. I don't know. I really liked the vibes of this, and I think I'm even more intrigued to read this than This Book is Overdue. It just was so light and good. Okay. Next, I read The 7 Moons of Mali Almeida by Shahan Karunatilaka. I'm pretty sure this is the winner of the Booker from 2022, and I just like heard great things about it, and I get why. I really liked the style of the writing, how it's written in almost vignettes, and the narrator is kind of funny, and I think this is going to be an enjoyable read. I was definitely intrigued, but I was not becoming obsessed with this. And in fact, I'm going to put it between Downriver and This Book is Overdue, as far as like how intrigued I was. So the last part of this chunk of books is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. I kind of knew what this was about, and I now, after reading the first 12 or so pages, I understand what it's about even more. And while I think that it probably has some really good discussions about ableism and human experiment ethics and such, I don't feel like I want to read it. So this is getting a 0 out of 5 for intrigue for me. Yeah, I'm not really interested to keep reading this, and I'm actually probably gonna get rid of it. So this one is going on the bottom of the pile. Again, like, I get what it is and why it's like that, but I just don't really want to read it. So that's my pile, and now I'm going to sort of put these on the shelf in between my first set, so that we have like a full spectrum of like most to least interested. Okay. Okay, yes, it is the next day. No, I did not accomplish my project all at once. That's fine. It's all fine. So I did actually read the first chapter of only the next 5 books, because I had I don't know if you saw, I had Breath in my original like lineup, but I actually did read the first half of that book not that long ago, like a year ago, via audiobook. So it shouldn't have been included in this. So I removed that and I only had 5 books. So the first one was Thunderstruck by Eric Larson. He's the author of Devil in the White City, which I really loved, and that's why I bought this at a library book sale. I have no idea what it's about after reading the first chapter or prologue or whatever. I still have not a whole lot of idea what it's about, but it has the same voice that I remember loving from Devil in the White City. I think it's still going to be really engaging and like a good read. Medium intrigue on this. Okay, the next first chapter I read was Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh. I bought this because of my women's prize aspirations this year, which are like kind of not gonna come to fruition, which is fine. So I did read the first like 15 or so pages of this. The chapters are all only 1 or 2 pages, so that made it a very speedy read, and it just has kind of a dark, ominous, like a foreshadowing thing going on. So I really liked that. I'm intrigued. I'm more intrigued to read this than I am Thunderstruck. So it goes like this. Okay. The next first chapter I read is The Wisdom of Your Body by Hilary L. McBride. I don't remember where I heard about this book, but I've had it for kind of a while, and I can't believe I left it alone on my shelf for so long, because after reading just the first chapter or the introduction or whatever it was, I'm so intrigued. Like I want to keep reading this. I think that this book is going to pair so well with the current journey that I'm on of really implementing a strong breathwork practice for myself and just some other stuff that I have going on. Like I just feel like what this book is about is really aligning with where I'm at. So high intrigue. Really can't wait to read. So that one's going on the most intrigued, whatever. The next first chapter I read was Regenesis by George Monbois. This is a book about feeding the world without devouring the planet. I think my mom sent me an Instagram post about this at one point, and then a few days later I saw it in a used bookstore and I was just like, done. But I found the author so charming, just the way that he was writing in the first chapter of this, like introducing his perspective and why he's sort of interested in this and like where he's coming from, was just like, yeah, it was charming. So I'm very intrigued. I think this is going to be a really interesting book, and I'm so glad that I read the first chapter of it, because I'm way more excited now to read it than I was before, which was the whole point of this. So I'm going to put this in slot number 2 here, like that. The final first chapter that I read for this group was I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. I recently read The Marriage Portrait, which is a work of fiction by Maggie O'Farrell, and I really loved it. I loved Hamnet also, and I found myself pretty much equally enamored of the writing style in this memoir as I was in her works of fiction. I'm very much intrigued to read this. I'm just surprised by that, because I don't think of myself as someone who enjoys memoir. So I am gonna put this between Thunderstruck and Cursed Bread, because that's how I feel. So now, most to least intrigued, let me slot these into the bookshelf. Okay, this is the new lineup from Leviathan Wakes to Flowers of Algernon, but looking at this, I sort of think that once I read the last 6 chapters, I'm gonna have to arrange them slightly differently. I'm having some second thoughts here. All right, I have finished the final 6 first chapters of my books, so let's talk about it. The first one is Devotions by Mary Oliver. This is actually a book of poetry, so I was a little bit unsure if it if it belonged in this group of books, because like no, I just read the first like 12 or so poems, which I really enjoyed. I was almost tearing up reading one of these earlier, and I'm just reminded of how much I love the way that Mary Oliver writes, the way that she writes about like nature and God and prayer, like all together, just hits absolutely the perfect notes for me. Yes, Carbon. So I'm so eager to keep reading these. I feel like I don't even want to put this back on the shelf. I want to just put it on like my bedside table and just keep reading this. So supremely intrigued. The next chapters that I read were The Monsters We Defy by Leslie Penelope. I knew nothing about this book when I picked it up, and I was pleasantly surprised, honestly. It is a historical fantasy, I guess, and already in just the first 2 chapters that I read, they're pretty short. There was a significant amount of world building. Like, I feel like I know what's going on. I don't know what the plot of this is gonna end up being, but I feel like I get the vibe, and I really like it, so I am definitely very intrigued to continue reading this. Not more so than Devotions, though. Don't get it twisted. The next first chapter that I read, I didn't read the whole first chapter, was Flights by Olga Tokarczuk. This is a book that was translated by Jennifer Croft, who I just found out I absolutely love her writing, so I'm eager to read something she translated. And I have liked Olga Tokarczuk's work in the past. This was kind of slow off the bat, though. I know that I will like this and I will read it, but now is just not the time. I was not hugely engaged. It's kind of slow, meandery, which is something I do like, but it's just not something that I'm really feeling gripped by at this time. So this is the least intriguing of this bunch for now. We'll see what happens. The next book I read the first chapter of was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This is a book that I think Connor picked out when we were at a bookstore together, and neither of us have read it yet. I just know that it has something to do with somebody who works at an aquarium and an octopus, and who doesn't love a good octopus book? And I think I will love this octopus book. The beginning was very sweet. I really like our main character. I forget her name, but I liked her a lot, and I like the octopus character in this. Yeah, I found the first chapter to be very cute and fun. That said, I don't feel urgently like I need to read the rest of this right now. So, you know, that's where it's at. So I'm gonna put that before Flights, but after The Monsters We Defy. Thank you, Carbon. Okay, the next first chapter that I read was From To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. This book made an appearance recently in my why haven't I read this book tag? And in that book I said I felt like this book's time was coming up, and now I think that that's probably actually not true, because I was not gripped by this. I know already that I do vibe with Virginia Woolf's writing, but I also think I know that I only vibe with it at the right time, and now it's just not the right time. I was intrigued. I did like the setup and the kind of cast of characters that we're being introduced to in the situation with the lighthouse, but I just like, once my you know, like 10 or 12 pages or something was over in this, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm putting this down. And I know that I'll pick it up again, but not right now. So this one is gonna be on the top here. Sorry, Virginia. Okay, and then finally, our first chapter is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I didn't read the first chapter of this because it's actually 94 pages long, which feels a little bit like a crime. I am a little bit confused about my feelings on the beginning of this book, because on the one hand, like, nothing really happened. Nothing is really being foreshadowed even. Like, it was very slow, introductory, kind of a start to the book. The first, I think, 15 pages I read. I can't pinpoint what about this had me so intrigued, but I wanted to just continue reading it. Like, I was like, great, I'm reading this now, which has only been the case for a couple of the other books on this whole shelf. So yeah, very highly intrigued by this book. So now where am I putting this? I think I'm gonna put it like here. Devotions, and then A Little Life. And now let me integrate these onto my bookshelf, and then we might have to do some reorganizing. We'll see. Let's try going the other way. Okay, how does that feel? I feel good about this, but like this, even this feels challenging. This feels wrong. I don't know. I'm like, maybe this. I really liked this though. It's just that it was yesterday that I read it. Maybe this belongs here though. And maybe this belongs here. How does that feel? Yeah, I think that feels good. I think that feels correct. So, you can't even see this guy. I think I am gonna unhaul this, even though I just got it, and I think I will return this to my dad and try to find a podcast or something that can give me the same information. And I'm going to really, I think these books I'm going to like put like on the top of my list. But like, oh, this was so good too. And like even, oh my god. Well, this didn't give me all the answers, but it definitely gave me some answers. So thank you so much for being here and watching this video with me. I hope that this was at least kind of entertaining for you. It was really entertaining for me. I'm really glad I did this. I'm feeling really excited about a bunch of my books that I didn't know I was excited for before this. So that's great. And I hope that I will see you back here sometime soon for another video. Okay, thank you so much. Goodbye.